Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. I gotta be honest with you, I'm not 100% mentally there for this week's episode of Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back, yada yada, because what happened today in this country was really, really shitty. I try not to talk about politics at all on this channel anymore. I've learned my lesson, but seeing what happened at the U.S. Capitol building today in D.C. was a dark day for America. It is a black mark on our nation's history, and nobody should feel good about what happened there. The people involved should not feel good about themselves. I don't want to say anything more about that incident because, you know, Lord knows things are going to change probably by the time this video drops or by the time most of you watch this video, and I don't want to say anything particularly incendiary to avoid particularly shitty comments down below. All I'm going to say is thank God for professional wrestling, because at least it's there to try and take my mind off of everything bad going on in the real world. So I'm doing my best to, you know, sally forth and bring you my usual best effort with the Wednesday Warfare reviews. And after this little blip here, we're not going to talk about it again. So just like what you like, don't be a dick, and God save us for 2021. It's New Year's Evil for NXT, and the show begins with Dexter Lumis walking up this platform to the light board. Don't let him touch it, he'll mess up the presets. He starts pushing some buttons, then he pulls a lever. It's kind of a cool little pre-taped transition where he pulls the lever, and suddenly his costume has changed. He's wearing a tux, and the full crowd is there, and the lights are up and everything. I appreciate that little intro. First match sees Damian Priest versus KARRION KROSS. Physical is a good word to describe this matchup here. It's just a lot of big strikes, little heavy looking hits and big slams. Priest is able to withstand a lot of Kross's offense, even smiles in Kross's face a couple of times. That's a big story in this matchup here. He's kind of defiant in the beating he receives from KARRION here. They're trading big kicks to the head. Kross throws Priest into parts of the set on the outside, but Priest keeps shrugging it off. Ultimately, Kross hits a Saito suplex and a big forearm to the back of the head. And I don't know if this is intentional or not, but even just in the second before Priest was hit with that, you could even see a little smile on his face, like maybe he was still defiant to the last. And I appreciated that they were telling that story in the ring here. So Kross, he looks good here. Priest, looking as defiant as he was and kind of laughing in Kross's face about it, shows that he's not a man who's fearful of KARRION. And I think both the guys look pretty good here in this match. Priest looks good in defeat, and Kross, in the most competitive match he's had since he beat Keith Lee for the championship last year, also looks good here as well. We get a promo announcing the Dusty Classic for this year, and they announce some of the teams that are involved, one of which is Killian Dane and Drake Maverick. Just saying, keep that spot in your mind. And then we've got Adam Cole and Roderick Strong being interviewed about their involvement in the tournament. They're facing Breezango next week. Adam Cole says they're going to continue the Golden Prophecy, not just with the Dusty Classic, but also Kyle O'Reilly's match later tonight. SANTOS ESCOBAR defends the Cruiserweight Championship against GRAN METALIK of Lucha House Party. I loved Lince Dorado's Megazord-inspired outfit for this evening as he accompanied GRAN to the ring. Early on, METALIK goes for a Hurricane Rana off the apron, but they both kind of slip, but SANTOS recovers nicely, ends up slamming GRAN into the barricade. METALIK, after some good back and forth in this match, METALIK goes on a big comeback, but SANTOS cuts him off, goes for a legato, then stops, then hits the Phantom Driver to ultimately win and retain. Thought it was an okay match, couple of slip-ups here and there, but otherwise very good action involved. We get a pre-taped Mercedes Martinez promo on Io Shirai where she says she doesn't care about the title of the biggest badass, she cares about the women's title, and she's coming for Shirai. Our next match sees the returning Xia Li. She's new battle-tested, she's been fully broken down and rebuilt with the mystery lady on her throne for this kind of cool entrance with her and Boa, sporting new looks, new attitudes, and it's a total squash match against Katrina Cortez here. She tries to come back with a kick or so, but Xia doesn't sell anything. Big kick to the head for Katrina in order to win this squash match. I have been strongly intrigued by this new storyline, this angle for Xia and Boa, where all those vignettes we see the quick cuts of the mystery woman, we see her on the throne here. You know, I'm still wondering where it's going to go, and I'm definitely still on board. Well, there's no fight pit tonight. The match between Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher was called off because Thatcher Thatcher is injured apparently and can't compete. I'm pretty disappointed in that, but hopefully they will have that at a later date because I definitely want to see that matchup. Then we see Bronson Reed being interviewed at ringside saying 2021 is going to be his year, and he picks Rhea Ripley to win this next match, last woman standing, as Ripley takes on Raquel Gonzalez. Raquel's the first one to bust out a weapon here. She starts walloping Rhea with a kendo stick, but then she brings out handcuffs, but it backfires on her. Rhea ends up cuffing Raquel to the chain link, and then ultimately Raquel powers out of that. They fight on the ramp, on the stage, in the back. They go plowing through a glass door at one point. Rhea Ripley almost has the match won, but Dakota Kai runs in with a kendo stick and starts swinging away, but then she gets shoved into a locker, which I thought was pretty funny. Gonzalez in the end powerbombs Ripley through the stage, and then she finally emerges and gets up just before the 10 count. So Raquel ends up winning this hellacious match by a frog's hair. This is a lot of fun to watch. One of the top matches of the night here. The Way get a police escort as they make their way to the arena. Johnny Gargano is way over celebrating the fact that he broke the Gargano Championship curse, and Candice LeRae gives him the gift of a plaque, and then Indy Hartwell and Austin Theory give him this gift of like a superhero drawing in the image of all 4 members of the group. And then Gargano announces he and Austin are entering the Dusty Classic when suddenly Shotzi Blackheart shows up in her souped up tank. Austin Theory calls her Mike Wazowski, which I popped for, and he goes up the ramp and Shotzi hits him right in the dick with the missile, and then Kushida shows up to even the odds, and suddenly we have a mixed tag team match announced by way of artwork from Dexter Lumis. He rings the bell, points to the side of the big screen, and the artwork shows up, and Wade goes, "How do you draw that fast?" So we got that match, Shotzi and Kushida versus Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. Shotzi with a huge dive onto Candice on the outside, where she pretty much face plants herself afterward. Those dives always a bit extra muster with Shotzi, and they don't always end up working out so well for her. But ultimately, Austin Theory gets involved. He gets hit in the dick again after Kushida drop toe holds Johnny into him in the corner. Kushida rolls up Gargano to win. So it appears from this look that Kushida might be the next challenger for Johnny and the North American Championship, which I'm definitely in favor of. We get a promo for the next takeover, which takes place on Valentine's Day. Now, I know the word massacre has got a bit of a negative connotation to it, but there is a huge missed opportunity here by not calling it NXT TakeOver St. Valentine's Day Massacre. I mean, you brought back the Great American Bash, you brought back Halloween Havoc, you brought back In Your House. I mean, this dead brand is a slam dunk, and they're totally squandering it. We then have an announcement from William Regal that there's going to be a women's Dusty Classic happening soon, as well as the regular men's Dusty Classic. I'm curious how many teams we're going to get from that, because there aren't a whole lot of female pairings right now in NXT, so I feel we're going to see a lot of makeshift teams put together here, except for, you know, Candice and Indy, Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter. Really hard pressed to come up with anyone else right now who fits that description of like an established female tag team right now in NXT. Let me know what you think is going to be in there in the comments section. But our main event is for the NXT Championship, a rematch from TakeOver 31 as Finn Balor defends against Kyle O'Reilly of the UE. Lots of graphs to start things off here. The big pivot point in the story early on is that O'Reilly is in a hold and he bites down on the rope for the rope break, and then Balor immediately kicks the rope, so the jaw becomes an issue. It's very much the tables have turned, because it was Kyle who broke Finn's jaw a few months ago, and now Finn's turning the favor by attacking Kyle O'Reilly's jaw. But Kyle's able to attack Finn's arm pretty extensively in this thing as well. Just another fantastic technical match here with a lot of big strikes. The match finally ends and Balor makes O'Reilly submit. Finn's a bloody mess, and it was a bloody good match. The show ends with Kyle. He looks like more bored and sad almost than anything else. He's very disappointed looking, but just kind of the way he's kind of holding, it's like this, holding his jaw. He just looks like he's kind of tired. But that visual aside, hell of a main event. AEW begins with an 8-man tag match. Two of the most influential tag teams come out of California in this generation. The Young Bucks and SCU take on TH2 and the Acclaimed. I love SCU wearing some shirts that say "Your rap is crap," very reminiscent of the West Texas Rednecks. This match was full of fun, innovative high spots and pinfall attempts. I mean, seeing the Young Bucks and TH2 work together in a match like this is always a recipe for some fun stuff. In the end, the Scoo Bucks win after Daniels hits the BME onto Jack Evans, who's in position for the Meltzer driver. Kind of a cool little combining of finishers there, even though Evans is in that position for a very long time before Daniels hits him, for the Bucks and for SCU to end up winning. Kaz and Daniels on the mic after they talk about how the next match they lose will be, like, if they lose a match, then they're done as a tag team, period. And they say they'll have the Bucks back until they inevitably face them for the tag team championships at some point in the future. But yeah, good opening match. Jon Moxley with his first live appearance on Dynamite since losing the AEW title to Kenny Omega Mega last month. It's a relatively brief but intense promo all the same. He says he has a zero tolerance policy towards shitty people, which honestly should be my new Twitter policy. And then he talks about how he wants to beat up Kenny Omega and Don Callis with the crowbar, but out of respect for Rey Fenix for his title match later tonight, he's not going to do it just yet. So props and respect for your restraint there, Moxley. But he ends up the promo with a very stern warning toward them that he could attack at any time and keep your eyes in the back of your head. So pretty good promo by Moxley here. We go backstage for a Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy interview, and because this is basically what backstage interviews are meant to do, Chuck gets maybe 5 words in before we get an interruption. A very well-dressed Miro and Kip Sabian interrupt, and basically Miro offers Chuck that, you can be my new best friend and you can do all my chores and everything for me. And Chuck says, it basically sounds like what young boy stuff is, and so I want to have a match with you next week. And Miro goes, well, if I beat you, you basically become my young boy. And so those are the stipulations, and we'll see how that goes. Our next match sees Jake Hager versus Wardlow. We see the Inner Circle on stage watching as the match goes on, and it's a big boy battle, and I always love this kind of stuff. Just big strikes, big throws aplenty. It does start to feel a bit repetitive with the slams near the end of the match, though. Wardlow with a big swanton. I love Hager's counter out of like the pinfall attempt into his triangle choke. Wardlow's able to get out of it, and then on the top turnbuckle here, Wardlow gets in the hold again, but he drops down, hits a big F10 on Hager to win the match. And so it's kind of an upset there, honestly. It's a big win for Wardlow, who doesn't wrestle on Dynamite that much, which is the more watched show between that and Dark. So I think it's just, more exposure for him. He looks really good here, and it's not going to hurt Hager at all here. But we get a little fist bump with them afterward, which is good. The Inner Circle's tight again. But then later on, we see this moment here where MJF goes. It's a very similar setup to him with what he did with Santana and Ortiz a couple weeks ago. He tells the cameraman to follow him into the room. Hager's getting his aggression out. He's just punching the walls and stuff. MJF calms him down and builds him up, saying, he basically puts him over, how much he respects him and everything. Hager's cooled down, and they're cool now, and that's pretty much it. So 2 out of the last 3 Dynamites, MJF has tried playing like Uniter. He's trying to, be a peacekeeper with everyone, which is very unlike his character. There seems to be a pattern developing here. Backstage, Private Party needs some juice to go with their gin, and like an angel waiting in the wings, you got Snoop Dogg coming in, plopping a big old bottle of juice down on the table. Also, I like the fact they just took the labels off these obvious products, like the Tanqueray label's not there, the Ocean Spray label's not there. Then Matt Hardy shows up with some manager's contracts for Private Party. He's taking a 30% cut, he says, but everything else on their contracts are there. And he says, I'm not a vulture, I'm not a monster. You can still make money off Cameo and Twitch and all that stuff. So Private Party signed the contract, and then everyone leaves the scene. The bottle of juice is still on the table. What are you going to do with all that gin then, guys? It's time for the weigh-in in preparation for next week's TNT Championship match. You got Brian Cage, who's flanked by the rest of Team Taz, and the champ, Darby Allin. Darby's got the new TNT Championship belt design. It was announced last week on the Brody Lee Tribute Show. The old design would be retired in favor of a new one, and I wasn't expecting a 1-week turnaround for a brand new design, but I was kind of like disappointed that, it's just the exact same design as before, only now it's a black strap instead of a red one. I'm not hating it. I think it's a great looking belt still, even better than the red strap, I think. But again, I wasn't expecting an immediate turnaround, like, maybe Darby won't have the belt for a couple of weeks or however long, and then they'll have a new one. But no, it's same belt with a new coat of paint on one part. But again, not hating the design. Cage weighs in first, then Darby, and there's a 100-pound weight difference, and Darby gets on the microphone and says, this is not a feud 9 months in the making. It's more like 27 years, because I've been dealing with shit like this all my life. Big running occurrence with this show is that there's a lot of swears from different people here, and the censors can get none of them on time. It's kind of funny to watch. So anyway, he wants to fight. They square off. The lights cut out, and it's Sting to make the save. Stands alongside Darby. Team Taz bails, and Taz gives the last word, promising a new TNT champion for next week. So yeah, I thought it was a fine segment. Again, it's just kind of the repeating trope of Darby and Sting helping each other. Where's this going to go? What is the source of their relationship? It is mysterious, but it also is kind of the same thing every week. We get a recap of Dark from the previous night where -1 Brody Lee Jr. confronts Marco Stunt in the ring. They don't show the actual shoving match that gets pulled apart in the segment, but they do have Brody kind of cutting a promo on Marco there. Then we see Marco and the rest of the Jurassic Express being interviewed backstage, and we get an interruption, because that's what you do. FTR and Tully Blanchard show up and talk some smack, and then Marcos had enough of this. Basically, he wants a match with FTR, but he wants Jungle Boy to be his partner, the two smaller members of the group, against FTR. So that match is happening next week. Should be very interesting clash of styles. Cody Rhodes takes on Matt Sydal next, but Cody is not alone. He's accompanied by his co-star in the Go Big Show, Snoop Dogg, WWE Hall of Famer Snoop Dogg, worth pointing out. And not only is Snoop there at ringside, he's also in the Arn Anderson role. He's at the Waffle House menu as the match goes on. And Cody comes out to a remixed version of his theme where Snoop does like a rap over it. But honestly, I can't understand what's happening in that song because the acoustics are bad. Anyway, great back and forth in this matchup here. Early on, Cody accidentally strikes Serpentico in the front row with an errant fist or forearm. That will come into play later in this segment. Cody goes for a moonsault but gets none of it. Sydal goes for the shooting star press, but Cody gets the knees up. Cody kicks out of Sydal's finisher and ends up hitting 2 straight crossroads to win in emphatic fashion. But then after the match, remember Serpentico? Well, he and Luther, Chaos Project, storm the ring and jump Cody after the bell. Sydal comes back to help out Cody, and then in comes Snoop Dogg, who Chris Jericho keeps screaming, he's 9 feet tall! Snoop gets on the top rope, takes forever to jump off, then finally hits a terrible looking splash off the top rope into Serpentico, like with the knee drop combination as Excalibur puts it to cover it up. It was not a great looking move, but whatever. I'm not asking too much from Snoop Dogg. I was amazed he did it in the first place. And whatever, I got a pop out of that. I needed the smile tonight, and so I liked it. The AEW Women's title on the line next as Hikaru Shida defends against Abaddon. Before the match begins, they're fighting on the ramp. Shida with a kendo stick shot right to the dome, but Abaddon sits up after taking it. The fight actually begins officially in the ring, and Abaddon is on a biting frenzy. She bites Shida in the leg, and then later she drags her under the ring and purportedly bites her neck again because she has blood on her mouth, and then we see like fake blood on Shida's neck. It looks really hokey, and that really kind of sours my mood for the rest of the match, basically. Abaddon works the champ over, but the champ fights back, slams Abaddon's head into the barricade. Shida counters Abaddon's finisher and hits the Tamashi for the win and to retain. It was an okay match except for the neck bite thing because like in the middle of the match keeps going on after this like potentially like lethal injury, like going for the jugular vein, and the blood's gone by the time the match is over. It's like it's mostly smeared off. So that was kind of off-putting. If you're gonna have a spot in a match with blood, like use real blood and maybe don't do this neck bite thing. Like, because I feel Abaddon, this is her first real major program on Dynamite, and so like it's kind of the Shayna Baszler thing. Once you open with neck biting, where do you go from there? And I felt like, you know, now that she's like part of the show now, like, where are we going to go with that? Is she going to be biting everyone's necks or body parts? Is that just her thing now? Or like, where's that going to go? And speaking of the ladies, we got a Ty Conti promo on Serena Deeb. She's flanked by Anna Jay and Silver and Reynolds, the Dark Order, so she appears to officially be with that group now, and she says she's coming for Deeb's NWA Women's title next week. In our main event, Kenny Omega defends the AEW World title against Rey Fenix, and this is a great match here. I mean, this is just a spectacular highlight reel come to life, honestly. Omega with a snapdragon on the floor to Phoenix, but a few minutes later, Phoenix the damnedest moonsault into a German suplex I've ever seen. And then later on, a big tope, and Phoenix almost flies into the second row. There's a great moment where Phoenix absorbs a V-trigger and bounces right back up with a super kick, and goes on a great run here with a lot of close calls. In the end, Omega catches Phoenix in midair, hits a Tiger Driver 98, a V-trigger, and the one-winged angel to win and retain. Wow, like what a match that was. Don Callis on the mic afterward, and he says, let's go. We hear there's something happening in the back, and we go to the scene on the video screen, and we see Eddie Kingston and his crew beating up Pac and Penta backstage, so no one's there to save Phoenix. They're about to hit the one-winged angel on him again when Jon Moxley shows up with the barbed wire bat. He goes for some attacks in there, and then all of a sudden out come the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson. The Impact World Tag Team Champions have now invaded AEW. We saw these two working with Kenny Omega on Impact the last couple of weeks, so they're all beating up Moxley, and then some more wrestlers come in and try and make the save, but they all get denied. Finally, the Young Bucks come in, and presumably to try and talk some sense into Omega and try and calm things down. They end up helping to kind of fight off the other wrestlers who are coming in, and this is, by the way, after Omega has just beaten the hell out of Moxley with a barbed wire bat, by the way. So then finally, you got Omega and the Good Brothers holding up that famous hand gesture, that familiar familiar hand thing that some wrestlers do. And then we've got all of those three guys, then finally the Young Bucks do it just as the show comes to a close. So this iteration, this version of the Bullet Club is reuniting in AEW as we cut to black. And that was wild. I mean, I'm kind of being sardonic about like that iteration of the Bullet Club because there's still so many versions of it. But I was excited to see that. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. I think the Bullet Club name still carries a lot of weight, even if it's not as big or as influential or as important as it was in its prime. It's still a relatively big deal. People often still talk about the Bullet Club. And, you know, this one's across like two different promotions, Impact and AEW. There's a lot of potential there. Last time we saw Bullet Club really in a prime spot in America was with ROH, and so enough times passed on that. You know, we'll see how they do with this interpromotional version of it. Two American promotions doing it. I think it sets up a lot of cool opportunities for both companies to do well with the new. If they don't call it the Bullet Club, something similar, the Artillery Gang. I don't know, but it's going to be something. I mean, there's a lot of potential there, and I am very excited now. The Young Bucks have presumably either turning heel, joining with Omega and Gallows and Anderson. There's a lot of good to be had out of this, and I'm really excited. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite. And you know what? In the interest of unity this week, I'm going to give both shows a point to kick off Wednesday Warfare in 2021. On a night where I needed some distractions, I believe that AEW and NXT both gave me a lot of distractions, a lot of welcome distractions. I was very entertained by both shows tonight. I think they both had a lot of great matches. The things that were bad about each show weren't like the worst things in the world. Like, you know, the only thing I didn't really like about NXT was that the Fight Pit match was pulled, but that was kind of beyond their control. And then with AEW, I should say, like the women's title match was kind of hokey once the neck bite was involved, and then there's those promo interruptions we keep seeing. But besides that, like most of the matches were really fun and entertaining, and just like it took my mind off the bullshit in the current events in the real world today. And in the end, that's kind of what we watch wrestling for, and I think both shows delivered kick-ass shows. And that's all there is to it. But what did you think of NXT and AEW this week? Let me know in the comments section below. And while you're there, if they can't use the name Bullet Club, why don't you submit your ideas for their new supergroup team name down there too? I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.